that you could actually encode a book onto the toothpick that way. Have you heard of such a thing?
Yeah, actually, it's a mathematical proof of irrational numbers. So irrational numbers are any number that goes on forever and doesn't repeat. And we all like to jack off pi, but there are a ton of irrational numbers. Infinite irrational numbers. And they're not hard to come by, and they could represent physical things. Like I did that video a while back that just showed you the physical representation of pi. It was a length that you could pick up and hold. So the book on a toothpick idea is this. First, you have to come up with your code. You have to decide what numbers mean what letters. Then you find an irrational number that contains that code. It would have to be an irrational number that was pretty easy to compute because you'd have to calculate the digits out to the whateverth number that represent however many letters you had in your book. Anyway, you figure out that irrational number and you figure out its physical representation. And I don't mean approximate physical representation. I mean, like pi, you would have to use a system of ratios or something like that to figure out exactly how physically to represent this irrational number. And then you mark it on a toothpick, or a series of toothpicks, or a curve, depending on whichever way you ended up coming about the number. And then as long as the person seeing the toothpick has enough information to know that this isn't just a simple mark, it is a representation of an irrational number, they can work backwards in the math problem to figure out what that irrational number is. And then if they know the code, they'll be able to convert that number into your book. So yes, that is a theoretical way to encode an entire book's worth of information on a single mark on a toothpick. And yes, you could theoretically do it multiple times. But this is kind of a cryptography thing. Like, if you just got a toothpick with a line on it, there's no way to tell if that's a code or not, and you definitely couldn't get it just by measurement. You would need to know ahead of time that you were looking for an irrational number and that there was information coded within. Because there's no way that we can just measure fine enough to go, oh, that's irrational. But when comparing ratios of things to each other, like in a circle, the ratio of the diameter to the circumference, that's very easy to come about an irrational number. So as long as the person who's trying to decode this book knows that they're not just measuring, but they're looking for a ratio or something, then they should be able to get that information. But if not, then it's just going to be someone measuring a toothpick and going, what the hell is this? Good way to send secret messages, though.